Al-Jazeera has learned that 11 Hamas members have been kidnapped in the West Bank. It comes after a day of sporadic violence between supporters of political rivals Hamas and Fatah.
There were apparent reprisal shootings between the factions after a roadside bomb killed a member of a Hamas-led security force. To celebrate last January's election victory, Hamas supporters have been rallying in Gaza.
Let's get the very latest now from our correspondent Jackie Rowland, who's in the West Bank. The situation appears to be changing by the minute. Jackie, what have you heard?
Well, the latest has been coming from the Al-Aqsa brigades, who have given a statement to the press in Nablus, to the north of here. Now, what they are claiming is that they say they hold 24 Hamas members, both in Nablus and the Gaza Strip combined. They say that they are holding these people, and what they're demanding is that no harm should come to any Fatah official in Gaza. And they've threatened that if some harm does come to any of the Fatah people in Gaza, then they will take action to retaliate. They're not specifically threatening to kill or hurt any of the people they're holding. They're just making unspecific threats. They're also issuing a demand. They're demanding that the Hamas military wing, the executive force, should get off the streets in Gaza. And in fact, there are allegations from Al-Aqsa brigades here in the West Bank that some of the men they captured around Nablus today, they claim that they were actually doing military-style training, although Hamas has denied that it has any plans to establish a wing of the executive forces here in the West Bank.
A fairly new departure, this, Jackie. It would seem to make any chance of resolving differences between the sides even more difficult than before.
It is seen as something of a worrying. Development. Certainly, we have seen the tit-for-tat violence between Fatah and Hamas in Gaza for quite some time. The fact that it is spilling over and that basically incidents are happening here in the West Bank and military groups, armed factions are making demands relating specifically to other events that have happened in Gaza really does indicate that the situation here in the West Bank is becoming more worrying. Up until now, the inhabitants of the West Bank have been spared the kind of factional fighting, street violence, which has blighted Gaza for so long, and I think that Palestinians here in the West Bank will be quite concerned about these latest developments.
Good to hear from you, Jackie. That's Jackie Rowland in Ramallah.
Well, for more on the story, we can now join Noor Ode, who's live for us there in Gaza. Noor, can you describe the atmosphere there in Gaza as these rallies to celebrate Hamas's anniversary and their election victory takes place against this backdrop of violence?
Well, the rallies that were scheduled to take place today were scheduled to be very large rallies. The showing was minimal, really far below Hamas's expectations because of what's going on the ground. So far, 5 people are dead today, including 2 civilians, at least 20 injuries, including 10 civilians who were trying to break that siege laid to the house of the leader in Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade in the northern Gaza Strip. The situation is very tense and the atmosphere is one of heightened tensions. Fatah issued a very strongly worded statement saying that it would never participate in a government of national unity with Hamas should these crazy actions, as it called them, continue. It also said that it already contacted the follow-up committee and said that they will not participate in any national dialogue if any harm comes to that leader of Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade and if these actions continue today.
And what about the impact of this violence on those national unity talks? Hopes for a political compromise seems to be fading.
They certainly seem to be fading, especially in light of this new Fatah statement. Right now, the lack of trust between these 2 factions is reaching another new peak. As we've seen in the past, every time there's a period of lull in the clashes, when they come back stronger, more violent than the episode before them. So what we're seeing today is an escalation in the violence. We've seen an attack on the general commander of the national forces in the Gaza Strip. The national forces are considering that an assassination assassination attempt, and that's a very serious development if we are to recall that national forces have never been engaged in any of these factional fighting. So right now, a lot of pessimism, a lot of efforts also to bring the situation under control. These efforts are being conducted by members of other Palestinian factions. We'll see if these efforts bring any positive results.
Noor, we've heard accusations and counter-accusations, kidnappings and attacks, obviously each side blaming the other, but who do the Palestinian people see as being responsible for this ongoing violence?
Well, ordinary Palestinians blame both sides for what's going on. Both sides are doing the shooting, both sides are doing the incitement, both sides are obstructing, in the eyes of ordinary Palestinians, an agreement on a national unity government that would lift the siege and alleviate their humanitarian suffering, their very severe economic situation. So there is, on the Palestinian side, as far as ordinary people are concerned, both factions are to blame, and both factions should be more responsible in addressing their concerns and their needs on a daily basis and on a national level, as far as facing the occupation, confronting the continued construction of the wall in the West Bank, and the general standing of the Palestinian cause in the international arena, which is seen to be taking a back seat right now to other issues.
Well, Noor, they're reporting there in Gaza. Thank you.
Calls for calm and a show of military strength on the streets of Beirut have pacified to some extent a tense situation in the wake of factional fighting that left 4 people dead and dozens injured. Hundreds attended the funeral of one of those who died, a student who was killed in Thursday's clashes between supporters and opponents of the Signora government. During the funeral processions, the Shia group Hezbollah called for unity amongst Lebanese people to stop the country sliding into civil war.
Yemen says it's stepped up security at its ports to stop Al-Qaeda fighters fleeing Somalia. All refugees from Somalia and Ethiopia are now being interrogated before entry. And in Somalia's third largest city, gunmen have attacked Ethiopian soldiers, killing one and injuring another. The attack happened at a money exchange market in Kismayu. Ethiopian troops are withdrawing, but some Somalis still resent their traditional rivals. Another 5 people have died during gun battles and mortar attacks in the Somali capital, Mogadishu.
A Russian diplomat has said that his decision on Kosovo should be delayed, at least until Serbia has formed a new government. He said Russia's sceptical about the United Nations plan to give Serbia's breakaway province virtual independence. But the diplomat said other members of the so-called contact group welcomed the plan and saw no need for the delay.
Suicide bombers attacked a hotel in Pakistan where guests were about to gather to celebrate Republic Day in India. The security guard and the bomber died at the 5-star Marriott Hotel in Islamabad, often used by foreign diplomats and businessmen. And as Kamal Haider now reports from the capital, the Pakistani president says he condemns the terrorist attack.
The aftermath of a suicide attack on a hotel in the heart of the city. The bomber tried to force his car into the hotel, killing himself and a lone security guard who tried to stop him.
I was in my car and heard a big bang. I rushed out of my car and saw lots of cars damaged.
Security forces sealed off the area and prevented the media from getting close to the site. This led to a scuffle and words being exchanged. The situation was, however, brought under control when the Interior Secretary came to calm nerve and give an official version of what happened here.
There is no crater on the ground at all, which always happens because the explosive blows up in the air. And the way area is affected, it only shows that he had something on his body. He was carrying something on his body.
Now, the officials from the security forces have cordoned off the Marriott Hotel, as you can see behind me. This is now confirmed that it was indeed a suicide attack. 1 suicide attacker and 1 security guards were killed. Kamal Haider, Al Jazeera, Islamabad.
In Kabul, a former Taliban official who oversaw the destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas has been killed. There was an international outcry when the famous statues were blown up 6 years ago. The largest of the 2 Buddhas was 53 meters high and dated back to the 6th century. Malavi Muhammad Islam Muhammadi, who was in charge of the Bamiyan province at the time, was killed by an unknown gunman on his way to Friday prayers.